Hey everybody, you're very welcome to In Forest and Lands. I'm going to show you how to build a bushcraft and survival bed inspired by the Spanish Inquisition. I'm Joe Price, survival instructor and wilderness skills instructor, and behind the camera is Ida Olsson.
Hello, everyone.
So stick around and enjoy us for a walk in the woods and see how we built this horizontal torture chamber. So you've gone off into the woods on your adventure and you've now come back with the materials that you need for it. You're going to need logs that are between thigh thick and wrist thick. You're going to need some small saplings or spars like this, and the tools you're going to need to carry them, or to gather them I should say, is a stout saw. The reason why I say a stout saw is because I know people like to carry backhoe Laplanders and so on and so forth, but in the colder conditions, which is usually where you would build this bed unless you're building a permanent bushcraft shelter, but when you're building this bed on the fly in colder weather, you're going to have more logs. It's very important to remember that when you're building a bed of any description, even if you're bringing equipment with you, the further away from the ground you can get yourself, the warmer you're going to be. It is about 0 degrees, maybe a little bit lower here today, so a bed of about this height using natural materials would be totally fine. But just remember that it's inverse to each other. The colder it gets, the further away you want to come from the ground. As the temperature drops, you want to come up. So carrying a stout saw like this, like the Silky, doesn't have to be a Silky, but something of about this diameter will give you a lot more, because in the colder weathers there's one thing that we're also doing as well, and that is burning calories. In the summertime you can float around and hydration is mainly the kind of goal of the game, but in the wintertime calories equal heat and they also equal energy, and they deplete at a rapid amount. So the smaller little saws that you're carrying and the more work that you have to do, you're sweating, it's a whole bad day. So just bring something like this with you when you want to. You can bring an axe, or you should bring an axe, especially in the winter months for the larger wood processing things. But with the axe here, you're not going to be using it to fell these trees. As Morris Kahansky always said, always err on the side of caution when it comes to tools, and don't use an axe when a saw will do. So using a saw to kind of just chop these trees down, find rotten ones and push them over, at the end of the day, you're not building a permanent structure here. You just want to get up off the ground and get comfortable. And then you're going to use your axe for putting points on these, because maybe sometimes the logs don't play ball, as in Mother Nature doesn't always build to levels and precision. You know, your logs might be different diameters, different thicknesses, so you could have a bed that maybe wobbles a bit, rolls a little bit, etc. So having a few stakes to hand just to whack into each corner to give you a bit of stability is never a bad thing. Also, with these beds, they require a fire of equal size. Building a bed like this and putting a central fire here is literally only going to warm your crotch, or going to warm your feet, or going to warm your head, and sometimes that's the choice you have to make. But if you have opportunities to get logs like this and build a bed like this, your fire should be 1 meter away from you and the length of the entire bed, so you get nice and comfortable. In fact, I recommend anybody, if a bit of snow comes down, to try and actually practice lighting a fire in the snow, because you can see where the snow melts, that's all the heat you're getting. So if you build this little small fire here, the snow only melts this much, you're not actually going to get any heat into your bed. So remember, just to recap, colder it is, higher your bed, and your fire should be just as long as your bed, horizontally or parallelly, maybe, possibly. We might have to get that. It's a word I struggle with, but should run parallel to your bed, and that way you can heat up evenly within your shelter. And that brings us swiftly on to bedding in and of itself, so let's get that sorted now. Especially when you're in the colder environments like this, you don't want to be going around the place, walking off into the woods burning calories. You're not building a bed for Instagram, you're building a bed to stay warm. I don't have that much spruce around me. I don't want to chop down live trees and get in amongst it. So what I will do is use this material here, which is also great for fire. But I'll use this spruce, this dead spruce on the ground, to build my bed up, and then try and use the good top needles and good stuff like that when I'm out and about. Unfortunately, spruce is not the most ideal bedding, because anybody who's doing tree identification, here's a good one for you. Spruce is spiky. So remember that. That's how I identify spruce from pine and all the other trees. Spruce is spiky, pine is soft. So that's the way I look at it there. And it's not ideal to sleep on if you're sleeping in the nude, but if you've got a good set of wool clothes on you, or you got good outdoor clothes, you still can sleep on spruce. Just kind of want something to cover your head. But now what happens if you have to take something off a tree? When you want to take something off a tree, the one thing that I cannot stand, and I see people do all the time, is making cuts that rip bark. I hate seeing bark tears. It leaves the tree open to infection. It lets all other pathogens get in, and it can take a long time to heal. So bark tear happens when you make an inefficient cut too close to the tree, and you pull on the branch, and then you'll end up tearing bark all along. When you go to cut a branch, the best way to do it is to create a little shelter for the tree, and that's the most important thing. You want happy little homes. So you just want to cut the tree at an angle, not straight up against the butt of the tree, at an angle, so then when it comes off, you're not creating any bark tear, but you're also creating a little tarp shelter, a little lean-to for this branch. And then when the rain and stuff comes down, you're not getting into the pathogens, and it can seal off this wound here. Cutting it so close to the tree, you end up with those scars, you end up with wound wood where the wound is trying to close around it. So coming in at a 45-degree angle is great, and it stops you tearing the bark on the tree, and it creates that little happy home, a little roof for the branch to be able to heal. Now, in saying that you're out in the woods, and you want to start processing stuff down, like I said, once you find somewhere, better than dragging all this back to camp through inclement weather, you just process stuff here, put it in your trash bag, put it in your backpack. When I come to stuff like this, yes, if I was making a fire, I would just put this straight on the fire. But what happens if you want to make a kindling bundle? Just like we talked about bark tear, the easiest way to remove branches is in this Y branch here. So rather than pulling with the grain, and as you can see, it can be very tough to get something to pull off when you're pulling with the grain. But if you take a firm hold of it and you pull against the grain, it's very easy. And I can collect material for my fire and material for my bedding super quick and trim stuff down. So I just thought I'd give you that tip. We're going to get back to building the bed using the resources that we have. So when it comes to building the bed frame, height is kind of equal to how cold it is. It is about 0 degrees outside now, and I just want to get myself up off the ground. So something that's 2 logs high, technically 3 if you count the ender parts. So 2 logs high, filled with debris like we're going to do, is enough. And that's where we're going to start with. You want to then bring it across and stack them this way. So you want long ones for this length, short ones for the cross length. This is what I often contest about and kind of think about when I'm building these things to find the fastest way possible, is because this is going to take calories. And as the weather gets colder, you also burn more calories. So the more calories you put into making this, the more calories you're going to get. The colder you can get quicker. You see my point. So you just want to build yourself something that's a bit broader than your shoulders and also just a bit broader than your head, because you're going to have to sling a tarp and further accoutrements over this later down the road. But that is the basic construction of the bed frame. I'm going to stake down the corners now and show you how to do that, and we'll get right into it. One thing that you want on you in the woods all the time is a handy piece of string, just for measuring things, or in case you have to garrot Agent 47 because he's coming to wreck your day. You want this piece of string to help you measure your wood, because don't forget, we're going to be walking away from camp and coming back. So once you have set your measurement out on the ground, I like to take my piece of string, stretch it out to my measurement, tie a little stop knot in it, and then when I go off into the woods, I can measure some up. And that includes my stakes, because you want to make sure that your stakes give you extra height on the bed. The reason why you want extra height is because you're going to be driving these into the ground. So if you cut them too small, they can end up down here. And then also you want them for that bit of protection. If you can only make a few stakes, or you're only going to put stakes on one particular part of your bed frame, make sure it's the side that's facing the fire. Because as you roll around in the night, I am a movable sleeper, or you're getting up and getting down to use the bathroom, you don't want to get back into bed, have your bed collapse, and you and your logs end up in the fire that's going to be running parallel to this bed. So give yourself that extra bit of height. Once you cut your first stake, well, now you've got your measurement for the rest of your stakes. But before you do, you always just want to make sure that you're coming back to camp with the right amount of equipment that's cut. I rather process my wood in the woods rather than carrying massive logs back to camp to cut and process. If I only need 8 stakes, I can make 8 stakes in the wood and put these in my backpack. So once you put your point on the end, you're going to drive it into these corner pieces here, and you can cut yourself some extra stakes just to give yourself some reinforcement. So we are back at camp, and we have dragged our boughs all the way back to here. That is the one thing that I love about these projects in the woods, is that I think every bushcraft project, although not an essential thing that you will do in the woods all the time, will teach you something. For example, bow drills are great about learning about plant ID and tree ID. And the one thing I love about building these spruce beds is it really shows you just how much material you need. The thing with bushcraft is when it comes to material gathering, it's kind of like buying a Christmas tree in a Christmas tree farm and then you bring it home and then it's 10 feet bigger than your living room. It is very hard to gauge that, and the only way that you can gauge it is by getting out into the woods and building these spruce beds. When I built my first spruce bed, I had to go back and forth so many times because I thought I had enough material, and then I put it in, I sit on it, and I'm still on the floor. So that's what the purpose of this particular project is. And then once you do it, you got that skill in the bank should you find yourself in a bad situation. But once you get your thatch into the bed, there's a little trick that I want to show you that I use, and it came from a great guy called Josh Enyart, who's a good friend of mine. Shout out to you, Josh, wherever you are in this world at the moment. And we discussed this before when it came to spruce beds. But when people put the thatching and the spruce into the bed, what tends to happen is they lump it all in and you get these spiky bits in the middle that jab you all night long. I mean, these beds ain't exactly like a down-filled mattress. You want to make them as comfortable as possible because they can be quite uncomfortable. So rotating these long boughs back around so you get an even distribution of the ends of the branches up and down is a great way to do it, and that's a personal choice. I prefer to turn mine this way, so I have all this fluffy pine needle stuff in the middle on my hips where I like it, and all these down towards my feet and my head. But you can also turn it around and have the spiky bits in the middle, but something just to watch for. I use the longer boughs in here, and using the technique that I showed you in the woods for removing the branches from the limbs where I rip these off, what I like to do is add thatching. Add springs. Inspired by IKEA mattresses, I will take the branch and I will stick it in here and I'll weave it in between the gaps like so. And I will build that layers. And the reason for this is that when you have a load of horizontal sticks, when you tend to lie on them, if you're a 120 kilo guy like I am, is that they will separate and you will end up on the ground or in a weird kind of sarcophagus for Megatron that's surrounded by spruce, and it's a weird way to sleep. So by adding this thatching, you can see already it starts to pull the bedding together. And then just like a spring mattress or a leaf bed mattress, that when you sit on it, you see there now, we've got added springiness. So the heavier you are, the more these lats you can add, and you can help create and keep that warm air in the bed. So that's just one tip that I wanted to show you, and I hope you've taken away some tips from this, that even if you haven't built one, this is probably the best way I've found to build one. And then if you have, hopefully there's some tips here that can allow you to build the better ones. But as always in Forest and Lands, I want to say that these bushcraft projects are very material heavy. We have landowners' permission to be where we are here at this beautiful place at our school. But if you want to build one of these in the woods, be patient. Don't just go out and start milling things off the tree. Try and gather responsibly. Don't tear bark. Don't be cutting branches off live trees to build a bed that you're not actually going to sleep in. But take the time to gather these. I actually waited until today, where last month we had a storm and a couple of trees came down, and we harvested the dead trees that came down to build this video. So patience is key to protecting nature, but it's also about having fun. This is a great project. Give it a try, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.